Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into one of the most fascinating, complex, and honestly, heartbreaking stories in modern history. We're talking about Michael Jackson, the king of pop. On one hand, you have this figure of absolute, unprecedented musical genius, a guy who literally reshaped global entertainment. But on the other hand, his personal life was a deeply troubled, incredibly bizarre, and ultimately tragic journey. So we're going to examine this stark dichotomy between his monumental, world-changing success and the devastating personal ruin that defined his life behind closed doors. Okay, let's dive into this with a massive number, 39. That is how many Guinness World Records Michael Jackson holds. Just let that sink in for a second. This instantly establishes the monumental scale of his success. We're not just talking about a popular musician here. We are looking at an absolute musical genius who rewrote the record books over and over again. His achievements in music really are the foundation for everything else we're going to unpack today.
And you know what's wild? That sheer scale of success, it didn't even stop when his life did. Michael Jackson spent a full decade, from 2013 all the way to 2023, sitting right at the top of the list of highest-earning deceased celebrities. His ability to generate immense wealth continued long after his passing, which really shows you just how massive his cultural footprint was. But while the world was consuming his art, the man behind this commercial empire was living a life that was profoundly isolated and, quite frankly, eccentric.
Section 1. Scandals at Neverland. To sort of build his own sanctuary, Jackson bought a sprawling 2,700-acre estate in California and transformed it into Neverland Ranch. And we're talking a fully functioning private amusement park and an exotic zoo here. It was basically a fantasy land designed to completely isolate him from the outside world. And within that extreme isolation, well, some pretty bizarre eccentricities started to take hold. Like, there were rampant rumors that he slept in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, supposedly trying to extend his lifespan to 150 years. It paints a picture of someone entirely disconnected from normal, everyday existence.
Now, this intense isolation really set the stage for highly publicized legal battles that would shadow the rest of his life. Over the course of nearly 2 decades, his world rapidly unraveled. In 1993, the first major allegations surface. Then, a decade later, in 2003, a grueling child molestation trial kicks off, which eventually leads to an acquittal in 2005. And finally, the desperate announcement of his This Is It tour in 2009. We're going to break these down impartially because understanding this rapid succession of events is key to grasping how his life fell apart.
The public ruin really began centering on his sanctuary in August of 1993. That's when a 13-year-old named Jordan Chandler formally accused Jackson of child sexual abuse. It was a massive global scandal. During this chaotic time, Jackson's own sister LaToya initially supported the claims, though it is very important to note she later completely retracted those statements. Ultimately, the criminal investigation didn't proceed, and the civil case was closed after an enormous out-of-court settlement of $23 million. But make no mistake, this forever altered the public's perception of Neverland.
Section 2. Health struggles and legal battles.
And this brilliantly illustrates the agonizing disconnect between public rumors and medical truth. Because the intense scrutiny wasn't just on his behavior. It was focused heavily on his physical transformation. Critics ruthlessly accused him of trying to intentionally bleach away his African-American identity as his skin grew lighter. But the medical reality? Jackson suffered from vitiligo. It's a severe pigment-destroying skin condition. This wasn't just some excuse. It was confirmed by his dermatologist and conclusively backed up later by his official autopsy. The public judged him so harshly for a devastating disease he literally had no control over.
But the vitiligo was really just one piece of a much larger health puzzle. First, Jackson underwent numerous cosmetic surgeries, and all that physical trauma led to extreme physical pain. When you compound that daily agony with his intense isolation and severe depression, it cascades into a deeply tragic, debilitating dependency on prescription painkillers. The origin of his addiction was grounded in very harsh, very real human suffering.
And right as his health is deteriorating, his legal troubles flare back up. In 2003, he faced trial again for child molestation. After a completely exhausting legal battle, he was acquitted on all counts in 2005, but walking away free didn't mean he walked away whole. The ordeal left him entirely financially ruined. Plus, the immense stress just severely worsened his medical issues, leaving him deeply dependent on powerful drugs simply to fight off this grueling, severe insomnia.
Section 3. A tragic final act.
So fast forward to 2009. Desperate to clear those massive debts we just talked about, Jackson schedules a comeback attempt, and a huge one, a 50-show London residency titled This Is It. The physical and mental pressure to perform at his legendary standard for 50 nights was just unimaginable, especially for a guy whose body was already failing him. Tragically, he wouldn't even make it to opening night. On June 25, 2009, just days before the first show, Michael Jackson suffered a fatal cardiac arrest.
So the crucial point is understanding what actually caused that cardiac arrest. It wasn't a natural heart attack. The culprit was a massive overdose of propofol. Now, propofol is not a standard sleep aid you pick up at the pharmacy. It is a powerful surgical anesthetic, the kind doctors use to put patients under for major operations in a hospital. And it was administered just to help him get some sleep.
Now you might be wondering, how on earth does a surgical anesthetic end up being used in a regular bedroom? Well, that falls squarely on the gross negligence of his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray. Murray administered a highly dangerous cocktail of sedatives in a standard residential room without any of the necessary vital monitoring equipment. To make matters worse, when Jackson's heart stopped, Murray actually delayed calling emergency medical services. Because of these actions, Dr. Murray was convicted and served a 4-year prison sentence for involuntary manslaughter.
The official autopsy findings, well, they paint an absolutely devastating picture of his final days. His once dynamic body had literally been reduced to skin and bones. At the time of his death, his stomach contained only drugs, no food. His entire biological system had been completely desensitized by years of chronic substance abuse. It's a very stark, incredibly grim reality of what his life had become behind closed doors.
Yet, despite that tragic physical decline, his cultural power was still just absolute. When the news of his sudden passing broke on June 25th, it literally crashed global internet servers. The sheer volume of people searching for information completely overwhelmed the web. Shortly after, his televised memorial service became one of the most watched broadcasts in the entire history of television. The world truly stopped to mourn him, showcasing the unprecedented scale of his global impact.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer today and leaves us with one lingering, heavy question. What is the true, heavy cost of being the ultimate king of pop? We've seen the 39 Guinness World Records, we know about the billions generated, but we've also seen the severe isolation, the rumors, the agonizing physical pain, and a life ended by a desperate need just to get some sleep. It is a stark reminder that immense fame often carries an equally immense personal tragedy. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it's given you a much deeper understanding